Hello, I'm Rexy Blue.
And I'm here to talk about Ark TLCs, a topic that's been talked about to extinction by Ark players, so I was wondering if I should even make a video about this. But thinking deeper into it, I still think I can bring new ideas to the topic. So today I'll be talking about Ark creatures that I still think need a TLC. The Titanoboa. The Titanoboa is one of Earth's coolest prehistoric creatures, essentially being a giant snake. However, it's not that cool in the world of Ark. They're unrideable and don't have any special gimmicks, like even other creatures on this list have some uses, like collecting berries, but the Titanoboa literally has nothing. I guess it could do damage for you, but it's not really worth it or useful. You used to have to tame them for their eggs, but since the Kibble update way back when, there's literally no reason to tame one. If I was in charge of a Titanoboa TLC, I would give them the ability to wrap around medium to small creatures, probably with the Allosaurus being the biggest of the bunch. This would apply to Rapidity and act as a mid to early game way to knock out creatures, and just be a more fun and creative way to do so. I would also slightly increase the size of the Titanoboa, making them rideable because I think they're too small, and people are probably going to be wanting to ride around on the Titanoboas and slithering around on the ground. I know I would. Titanoboas are really cool, and I wish they were rideable in Ark. So yeah. And the final thing about the Titanoboa I would change is increase its health stat from a base of 300 to a base of 375, since players are now going to be riding around and using Titanoboas to go knock out and tame stuff. I think this would really help to make the Titanoboa slightly less squishy. The Bronto / the Diplo. I decided to put the Bronto and Diplo together as they're pretty much in the same boat. Sauropods are amongst the biggest and strongest of all dinosaurs, but in the world of Ark, these two sauropods just aren't really worth taming. The Bronto is extremely weak and doesn't really have too many uses aside from its platform style and collecting a lot of berries, but it's so slow that if you build your base in a snow biome or any other biome that doesn't have bushes spawning close together or all clumped together, it's a pain to walk from bush to bush and it would be just much easier and faster to use something like a boss theory. That being said, I still prefer a Bronto over a Diplo because Diplos do 0 damage. However, they do have a cool saddle with 10 passenger seats, making a total of 11 with the rider. But as single player, this isn't useful at all, and PvE and PvP is better if players are on their own individual dinosaurs who do damage. So yeah, I think they both need TLCs. For the Bronto, I would give it 2 new abilities with its tail. It's now going to be able to use its tail to hold onto creatures like Rex and Spinos, and then be able to drag them away from certain areas into traps or somewhere else. The Bronto would still take damage, so you gotta watch out when doing this. The second ability is being able to wrap its tail around larger tames, dealing massive amounts of rapidity super quickly, but you would have to be careful as this would also drain their oxygen. I'll put a blue circle above the creature when doing this to indicate how much oxygen they have left and when to know when to let go. I would then give it some utility use by having it emit a call named Rally the Herbivores, where all nearby herbivores will gain a 10% damage and resistance increase, as well as being immune to all fire and bleed attacks for 6 minutes. This would mainly be used for the dragon boss fight on the island, as Brontos can't enter bosses' arenas. You can still use this call before entering and have it for a decent while to still be effective within the battle. Finally, I would give it a speed increase. One thing I've always wanted to do in Ark is have my base on the back of Bronto and use it on the go. But what stopped me from doing this is Brontos are just so slow, and you might be saying, well, a massive sauropod should be slow. Well, the Dreadnought, who's like more than twice the size of the Bronto, is faster. So yeah, I just hope the Bronto gets the love it deserves for being Ark's original giant. First off, for the Diplo, I would give it a model update. It's one of those creatures that's been around from nearly the beginning, being added in 2016, and I think it's time for an update. It just looks goofy to me. Hey, it at least looks miles better than Margosaurus though, right?
Oh my goodness!
When I make these TLCs, I want to stay pretty faithful to Wildcard's intent on making these creatures. So I actually wouldn't have the Diplo do damage. Instead, it would receive a massive knockback buff, being able to knock back creatures even the size of Gigas far away, and would have a stomp attack that will make smaller tames get scared and run away. But their main ability is messing up whistle commands. Thanks to the long-tailed Diplodocus, it can snap it and disable other enemy players from commanding new whistles on tames. So if a creature is left on neutral, a player can't whistle it off. Same if a player has a creature on follow, it can whistle stop follow or land. No other creature in the game has its ability, and it would make the Diplo very unique. It would finally give me a reason to tame a Diplo, besides the fact that I really love them in walking with dinosaurs. The Paraceratherium. The Parasaur will always have a special place in my heart, as it was the first ever 150 creature I tamed in Ark, in my first world. I even named him Yes, just because I was so happy to finally tame a 150. The Parasaur isn't the most useless creature in the game, thanks to their platform saddle and health, making them good soakers in PvP, which is a good use. But I want the Parasaur itself to be good, and not just because it has a platform saddle. The Parasaur for a long time was the biggest mammal to walk on land, both on Earth and Ark itself, but in real life in Ark was replaced by both the Paleoxodon and Dinotherium. So this ancient giant needs some respect for holding a title for so long, and I want to give him a unique ability called Familia Mammalia. A bit stupid, but I think it's funny. What this does is basically Parasaurs will do a roar similar to the Yudi, but only for all nearby mammals. We'll get a pack buff boosting the resistance and damage, and I'll throw in speed as well, because why not? This would also cause all nearby mammals to do extra damage to dinosaurs, since dinosaurs kind of stomped the mammals for millions of years. I would then give the Parasaur a model update, because as much as I love them, the model does feel a bit outdated. And yeah, I think they just make the Parasaur that much better, and again, I love Parasaurs, and I would love if Wildcard would give them a TLC similar to this. So yeah, the Mosasaurus, or like some people like to say, Mosasaurus. For the aforementioned King of the Depths, the Mosa isn't really that good. Sure, they do a lot of damage, are quick, and have a lot of carry weight, but they're still a pain to travel and explore the oceans with because of their turn radius. If you're fighting on the Mosa and something appears behind you or next to you, it's so annoying to turn your Mosa around and try to fight them. It doesn't help that they don't have any sort of second attack too, so if something isn't attacking you head on, you're gonna have a rough time attacking back. Not to mention, I'm just not a big fan of the model. It straight up just looks bad to me. What I would do to the Mosa is give it a new ability. Because it's so large, it can now generate a current using its flippers, so strong it will move all things around or even behind the Mosa towards its mouth. The smaller the creature, the faster it moves forward. Players would have to swim towards the tail diagonally of the Mosa to escape it at an extremely slow pace and would still be stunned after 10 seconds of doing that, or swim with the current normally, but would now be near the mouth of the Mosa and again be stunned for 10 seconds. They would also be able to jump from the water like a whale and splash creatures on land. This will grant land creatures with extra swim speed, oxygen, and a way lower stamina usage while in the water, and acquire a resistance and damage increase, but only when swimming. The Megalania, or Australian Giant Lizard. I'm a fan of giant lizards, especially the ones that walk upright on all four legs, which is why I really like the Caprasuchus and Phascosuchus in Ark, and I really wanted to like the Megalania, but I just don't. It doesn't have anything super going for it. The best thing I think about it is the wall crawling ability it has, and the fact that it can breed babies for Megalania toxin, both of which usefulness depends on what map you're playing on. So yeah, what would I do to make the giant lizard useful and worth taming in a playthrough? Since Megalania dropped toxin, I think a cool idea for them would be if you put normal arrows in their inventory, they would turn them into trank arrows, saving time and resources from making narcotic. But if you've already made trank arrows or darts, put these into Megalania's inventory and you'll get Megalania toxin all over them, making these items even better for tranking. I would then give it a massive speed buff in open areas, similar to where they actually lived. I think letting the toxin turn arrows into trank arrows and making already existing tranks better would make the Megalania a very useful utility creature for players. The Plesiosaurus. Growing up, I've always been a big fan of the Plesiosaur. I love sauropods in the water, so Plesiosauruses were like the best of both worlds. In Ark, I always say I'm going to tame one and use it as a mobile water base, but don't do it because of the practicality of it. They're decently strong and very quick, but similar to the Mosa, they have a really hard time hitting opponents due to their small attack range. Plesiosaurs are just such an iconic prehistoric aquatic animal that I want to show them some love. For TLC, when in the water, a Plesio will now be able to create its own cyclones, or underwater tornadoes. This will drag all creatures besides Mosas, Tusos, and Chasasauruses to it, and drag players to it as well, making them stuck in place for the duration of the attack. For out of water experiences, I would give them the ability to crawl on land at a decent speed for an aquatic creature, but nothing to write home about for a land creature. But they would have the ability to jump high above the water and would take a 90% fall damage reduction upon hitting the ground. Their final ability would be called Sprinkler. They now would be able to drink water and spit it back out across great distances, which will allow them to water plants, restore water reserves, and cure your own thirst. However, they would also have the ability to spit this on electronic things and short circuit them for 5 minutes. I think these would all be great changes, and maybe even meta changes to the Plesio. The Archaeopteryx. Honestly, I don't have much to say about the Archaeopteryx. They barely affect gameplay if at all, and aren't really worth taming, as a parachute is just straight up better. Right now, it takes 2 hands to hold one Archaeopteryx up, so you can't use weapons when holding them, meaning you're sitting duck in the air if anyone sees you. To lift up the Archaeopteryx to the spirit in Ark, I would make it so the Archaeopteryx, which is getting very hard to say now, instead of requiring your hands to hold, sits on your shoulders. So now you can use a weapon when using one. But not now only can you use one, but 2 Archies on each shoulder. When a player has 2 Archaeopteryxes, they are now able to jump or boost themselves way into the sky, mid-air, or off the ground, with a limit of 3 before needing to touch the ground again. And if you're on the ground, you could spam this jump again to increase the height of your player to, like, I guess, climb up mountains, or not mountains, climb up hills, get in high places, on stuff like that, and bases as well too. And if a player only has one, it works like a parachute or normal Archie, but now you can use weapons so you're not completely defenseless. The Pachyrhinosaurus. And the final creature on this list is the Pachyrhinosaurus. Pachyrhinosaurus is such a cool dinosaur and very cool and memorable to your top enemy, so it's so sad in Ark. It's one of the most forgettable creatures in it. I had to look up what these guys do, as I literally didn't really know anything about them despite having hundreds of hours in Ark. And what they do is actually pretty cool, at least in a concept wise. They can release a pheromone which calms things down in a certain area of the Pachyrhino, but you gotta be really close to it, so it's not super useful. And in a range pheromone which will cause things to attack you. The biggest things both pheromones work on are Theres, Stylos, and Carnos, and everything below these guys. For some reason, Owls are affected by the calming one, but not by the enraged one. And while this sounds pretty cool, it doesn't sound practical. Most players aren't running around the Pachyrhinos, especially since they're pretty slow, so using the calming down ability isn't going to be that useful, and the enraging one could be sort of useful, using it to lure creatures into taming pens, but most creatures in this game already aggro on the player, and if not, you could hit them with a trank to get their aggro. Really, the only thing the Pachyrhino has going for it is its head reduction armor like the trike, but even then, trikes are just way more common than the Pachyrhino, meaning you're going to have an easier time looking for trikes and finding good levels. Not to mention, what have they done to my boy? When I was younger, Pachyrhinosaurus wasn't only one of my favorite ceratopsians, it was one of my favorite dinosaurs in general, because I thought it looked so flippin' cool. But in Ark, it looks like a freaking alien. No joke, it looks more alien to me than any DLC creature ever released. They really need to change them all of it. So what would I give for a TLC? Well, to make it different from the trike, I would allow it to use its head to smash and collect rocks, crystals, obsidian, etc. Not as good as a Dodic or Anki, but for early game, it would be pretty good. Then similar to the Megalanium, I would have it so if you put arrows into its inventory, it would create both calming arrows and enraging arrows. So say you need to get past an aloe pack, you can shoot one aloe with a calming arrow, and the effect will go to all the other aloes, so you can safely get by. And say you see a big clump of dinosaurs, you see a Rex. You can shoot an enraged arrow, shoot at the Rex, so everything will go in aggro onto the Rex. Now I have it work on pretty much any dino. I just wouldn't have this work on Tames, Dinos in a Tech Cave, and Extinction Caves. And of course, I would change the model of the Pachyrhinosaurus. That's the end of the list, and before I go, there's a couple honorable mentions I want to say. The Dilophosaurus could definitely receive a TLC. The Quetzalcoatlus is pretty useful, but I would also love if you got a TLC, make it even more useful. Dunkleosteus, again, very useful. I think mainly just a model update for the Dunkleosteus is what I want. Carnotaurus are fine, but I think you could cook up a TLC for them if you really wanted to. I love Carnotauruses, so I would love if they did get a TLC. The Terrorbird, again, Terrorbirds are a very cool prehistoric animal, so them receiving a TLC would be great. And finally, the Capriceutuses. As I said before, I love lizards that walk around on all four legs in an upright position. I know it's kind of weird, and not position, by the way, stance. So yeah, I would love if these guys receive a TLC. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoy my videos. It really does help a ton. Comment below what creatures you think need or you want to receive a TLC. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'm Rexy Blue. Have a great day and bye-bye.